Bonjour à tous nos compagnons d'armes et nos téléspectateurs. Voici les actualités de cette semaine. En regardant le 100e anniversaire de la fondation du Parti communiste chinois, Mao Zedong explique la décision et l'ambition du Parti communiste chinois d'écraser complètement Taïwan, comme le révèle le discours de Xi Jinping. Il a également prévenu les Taïwanais que la plus grande crise de Taïwan venait de l'intérieur de l'île.
老调重弹，然后呢说是什么9·2共识啊，是吧？两岸人不打一家人呐，这是当时骗国民党蒋介石的时候，国民党不打当时的刘匪共产党的是同样的话。但其中有一句话啊，大家要记住里边特别重要：坚决粉碎任何台独的图谋，共创民族复兴的美好。这一句话把一切全否了。只要你是台独，我就粉碎你。我粉碎你跟打你有啥不同？美哥，刚才红最懂得懂共产党的流氓语言是吧？你听我的，咱俩是哥们儿，谁不打谁？不打哥们儿啊！当你不听我的时候，我不打你，我弄死你，我碎掉你。香港人、台湾人不懂这个文化的，你像老左他不听不懂的，他坐在旁边他也听不懂。这是昨天我在那个浴缸里边听了，我不愣一下子，就这帮孙子已经真准备好要粉碎台湾。你觉得粉碎台湾好呢，还是不打台湾好呢？是吧？那么台湾是没有香港的选择的，台湾的本岛，你只有联合在一起，首先清除的卖台贼。台湾最大的危机是台湾的不是4大不要脸，台湾几乎是70%的一些国民党的这些高官将军已经是被判了台湾了，已经再一次的卖掉中国人民，卖掉中国人的未来，这是核心。海外的台湾人呢？你看你啊，美哥戴着墨镜，穿着紫衬衫，帅得不得了，降福祥的，脸润滑滑的，你已经忘掉台湾了啊！我就觉得你都混，你看左哥，你看左人多瘦啊，是不是？一说的浑身发抖，你就台湾人过太长美好的生活了。你要记住，海外台胞，共产党拿下台湾以后，第一个要打击绝不是海外香港人，他根本看不起你。他把你弄死你，他什么段子，他根本看不起你。昨天都轻描淡写香港了啊，已经觉得你已经完蛋了。但追杀台湾人比追杀新疆人还厉害，他没有把疆族常挂在嘴上，这个把台湾人，就像那个将军说的，台湾人和香港人有多少人是要被杀掉的，就是被粉碎的，你也是被粉碎那个。海外台湾人要不懂得这个，你还以为你像戴着墨镜穿着紫衬衫在美国过着美好的生活，那是不可能的啊！你只有行动。
Hao Haidong a révélé lors d'un entretien télévisé qu'un officier supérieur du Parti communiste chinois lui avait dit personnellement qu'ils envahiraient Taïwan dans 2 ou 3 ans. Voici l'enregistrement de l'entretien de Hao Haidong.
常小哥，这也是我跟你讲哈，我们俩亲身的经历，我相信我说的这个话，七哥也都会知道啊。我们都有共同的朋友，那他都是非常高级别的这种啊，就是将军这个级别的人啊。他跟我们有一天我们吃完饭啊，这个真正的到了他的办公室里面以后啊，没有在公众场合，没有在只有到了他的办公室那天啊，我们俩坐下来去跟他聊天的时候，他就跟我们讲了非常郑重的、非常正式的啊，在没有任何人的情况底下，完了跟我们俩说，你们俩要做好点准备，2、3年以内应该要打仗。那这是我们最高级别的中共里面的将军跟我们俩说的啊。所以对台湾的动手，共产党我们感觉他不是假的。因为习如果还想所谓的一尊，所谓的他想真正他实现他能合法，让未来党内不清算他，包括老百姓对他还能拥护，他唯一的就是打台湾。所以我相信所有的台湾国际社会应该对中共的这种邪恶跟他们的愚昧跟他们的这种狂妄，应该我们大家应该认识到，应该去保护啊，对民主法治啊这种这个还有这么一块为中国未来也留下的一块民主的这种阵地，我们应该去，包括我们新中国联邦啊，爆料革命应该得到 我们最多的力量啊，大家团结在一块儿去保护它啊，这是我的一点真实的感受以及看法，常导哥。
Le président directeur général de Getter, Jason Miller, a été interrogé par Steve Bannon de War Room pour expliquer comment briser le monopole et la dictature de l'information par les géants technologiques de la Silicon Valley.
Okay, we are in an oligarchy. Our original co-host, Jason Miller's back. He's got a new social media platform. We're going to talk about how you break the oligarchs in Silicon Valley. Jason Miller joins us in the War Room in a moment. Okay, our original co-host with Raheem Gassam and myself, Jason Miller, is now the CEO of new social media platform Getter. Amazing interview last night on Steve Cortez and Jen Pellegrino's show on Newsmax. Just incredible. Jason, I want to bring you in. And first off, Raheem's taking notes about how his next gig is going to be a CEO of some big social media platform. So make sure you're helping him out here. But we brought Cortez in because the interview was so great last night. One of the things that Cortez talked about and Raheem talked about in the first block was about the oligarchs in Silicon Valley. So actually, before he talked to you about your apparatus, I want you to lay out to the audience, because you were comms director for us in 16, you were the chief strategist in 20. Walk through the power these social media oligarchs in Silicon Valley have over not just the conservative movement, the people of the United States, but actually had over President Trump.
Yeah, and Steve and Raheem and Steve, great to be with you. You know, Bannon, every time I see the picture of you and Raheem up there, it kind of reminds me of, it's almost like I was a bad prom date. 10 years later, just, cut out with Jason from the picture. And, like, hey, where was the third guy? Then at one point you guys like swapped in Jack Maxey, so then Jack like the plastered prom date. But no, it's an honor to be back at War Room.
Just put his head on your body.
We started off with War Room Impeachment. Now here we are with War Room Pandemic. Steve, you and Raheem have done well over 1,000 episodes. Very impressive work. And Cortez, absolutely love your show on Newsmax every night at 9, in case folks aren't watching every night. But here's going back to the question, Steve. Here is the issue at hand: is these big tech oligarchs, not only do they control the media the way that they sat on, say, the Hunter Biden story, they control banking. They also control they also control many of the levers of government, and the way that they go and put their political foot on the scale at every single opportunity. I don't think people realize the hidden hand. And actually, it's not even really the hidden hand. They just do it blatantly.
Okay.
Les commentaires de Donald Trump ont été bloqués par les géants de la technologie comme Facebook et Twitter. Et le président directeur général de Getter, Jason Miller, explique à War Room comment Getter évitera de tels incidents. Il a dit que Getter, G-E-T-T-R, est une technologie de pointe, un marché d'idées.
President Trump would not have won in 16. I think he says this all the time, or won the primary in 15, leading into 16, if it had not been for his ability in social media, particularly Twitter, and obviously the posse on Facebook, but he and Twitter, to disintermediate the mainstream media that tried to block him out. So how does this platform, walk us through this platform, and Raheem, you're the social media expert, jump in, and Cortez, you know this better than I do, but walk us through what you guys have created. Why is it an alternative, and why, particularly for the MAGA movement and for everybody in the Trump movement, should they be loading into this thing?
Well, thanks for that setup. So what Getter is cutting-edge technology, a marketplace of ideas. It's a place where we do not cancel people because of political speech. You're not going to be deplatformed because of political speech. We want there to be a place where the social media oligarchs cannot come in and say that your voice is not allowed. And so some really cool features with it. And again, it goes live at about 10 a.m. on Sunday. There is a beta version that's currently up on the App Store, which, by the way, yesterday we hit number 4 for social media apps in the ranking and number 23 for downloaded apps overall. So a lot of interest in this thing.
Hold, hang on. You're 4 already in the Apple Store for social media, and you're, 23 for all apps? Is that correct?
Yeah, and we don't even officially launch until Sunday, Independence Day, by the way, at around 10 a.m. So that's the level of excitement. That's the energy that we're seeing around the Getter technology, and folks are really blown away. Post can be up to 777 characters long. There's also in-app video editing. Also, the pictures about 25-30% more clear. And a really cool feature, you can import all of your tweets at the beginning. And so your entire history, your intellectual property comes with you.
So walk through. By the way, Raheem, guys, just jump in if you want. But how do people get in? What's the process for actually onboarding? What's the process for getting onto this? Is it going to cost people any money? Is it all free? Do they give up their data? I mean, what's the catch? It sounds too good to be true, so there's got to be a catch.
Well, there's no catch. I mean, the fact of the matter is you can go and sign on for free. You can go and use it. We are going to be expanding into certain e-commerce areas that we think will be a great benefit to consumers as we move into later on into Q3 here and into Q4. Probably bring in some advertising as we round the corner into next year. But whether it be the Apple Store or Google Play, it's Getter, Gettr, free to download, free to use. This is really exciting.
Jason Miller explique comment Getter traite les bots du Parti communiste chinois.
How are you going to avoid? You talk about people want to debate, but how are you going to avoid those enemies of the MAGA movement globally, the CCP, but also here in the United States? They're going to try to load up with hate speech and white supremacism, all that. How are you going to moderate that?
Yeah, and we've already seen a little bit of that yesterday. And so we have both an AI component and a human moderation component where we go through and we make sure that we eliminate some of those bot accounts that are coming in trying to be disruptors. And when you think about it, it's almost kind of a sign of respect, the fact that whether it be the liberals, who knows if we have some hidden hands with big Democrat funders or some of the enemies like the CCP coming in trying to be disruptive, that shows they see us as a big threat.
Jason, I know you're jammed for time. Could you just stay through the commercial break? We got one or two more questions to ask you, and we want to once again go through how people actually get on the site. So if you could just hang on, we're going to take a short commercial break. Cortez, Raheem Kassam, Steve Bannon with Jason Miller. They're launching on Independence Day. They're launching this major new social media platform called Getter. It's kind of in the, I would say, the category of Twitter. Short commercial break. Jason Miller will return with us in just a moment.
En regardant le 100e anniversaire de la fondation du Parti communiste chinois le 1er juillet 2021, Steve Bannon a exprimé son opinion. Le Parti communiste chinois est le régime le plus meurtrier de l'histoire de l'humanité et a semé le chaos pendant 100 ans sur le peuple chinois. Les États-Unis devraient avoir le soutien du peuple chinois pour démanteler le Parti communiste chinois de fond en comble.
Is China too big to fail now?
No, I think the celebration shows you what the issue is. You remember in the Josh Rogan book, which I think was the best reported book about the administration so far, I was one of with Navarro, the heads of what they call the Super Hawks. We believe that the Chinese Communist Party is a transnational criminal organization. It's not a legitimate government. It has wreaked havoc, 100 years of chaos on the Chinese people. It's killed outright about 80 million to 100 million through starvation, torture, just killing them. It's killed 400 million abortions, forced abortions, 80% of which were little girls. This is the most murderous regime in the history of mankind. And that murder and mayhem and chaos has been on the Chinese people. It's destroyed one of the greatest civilizations in the world. No, not only they're not too big to fail, the nation of China and the Chinese people will not fail if we have their backs to confront, dismantle the Chinese Communist Party. And it makes me sick when I see CNN and the celebrities in Hollywood and the NBA and all this celebrating this commemoration. It's absolutely outrageous. This is a murderous dictatorship. It's the greatest killing machine in the history of mankind. And the United States has to understand it has to be dismantled root and branch.
Dans l'épisode du 2 juillet de War Room, Steve Bannon a clairement affirmé que Donald Trump va se présenter aux élections 2024 et le Parti républicain va reprendre la Chambre des représentants.
Donald J. Trump is running again in 2024. There's absolutely no doubt about that, okay? This is all a plot by the Attorney General, Letitia James, the district attorney in New York, because they couldn't get President Trump on any of the other impeachments, any of the phony stuff. They had to trump up these charges for really fringe benefits to employees over 15 years to try to stop him. They're not going to stop him. This is only going to make the MAGA movement more determined. This is what happens in a third world country. This is what the Chinese Communist Party do to people when they get out of power. And this is why right now, from Arizona to Georgia, you see this 3 November movement. You see people going to these school boards for the critical race theory, the parents. The MAGA movement, the America First movement, the Trump movement is more engaged, more energized. You can see in your ratings every night. You've become an alternative to some of the other networks that don't cover this as thoroughly. This movement's on the march. Donald Trump's going to run for president again. And I got to tell you, he's not going to be stopped by a bunch of pencil necks in New York City. They're pulling up these trumped up charges to try to stop him. It's only going to empower him.
I couldn't agree with you more. I tweeted that out the other day. Once they put those charges in and he had said he was running, I was like, I know the answer. He is dug in. He's going for this. But I got to ask you this real quick question. If he runs again, and I agree with you, he's in, who do you tell him if he calls you and says, Steve Bannon, I need a running mate, who should it be?
I think there's such a deep bench of those, Sean, and it'll shake out. I mean, the good thing about this movement, it's got so many great personalities in it. I think that time will tell on that. But I think the most important thing is he's got to head the ticket. Look, we got to get to the bottom of November 3rd. We got to take the House, and we will take the House in 2022. I think he ought to be the interim Speaker of the House so we can impeach him. He can take the gavel from Pelosi, impeach him Biden in 100 days, announced for president. He's got to head the ticket. We're going to have a sweeping victory in 2022, I think 40 or 50 seats. We're going to have a sweeping victory in 2024. And the reason is the Biden administration have turned over the cards. The radical left, the woke corporations have shown America what's at risk here. I think people realize now that we've got to get to the bottom of what happened on November 3rd. We've got to win in 2022, and we've got to back President Trump's play with whoever he picks in 24.
Dans l'épisode du 1er juillet de War Room, Jacques Posobiec a exprimé sa réflexion sur comment le Parti communiste chinois contrôle les gens en stimulant le petit tyran au fond de chacun, en quoi le Parti communiste chinois transforme les gens.
The history of the CCP, and then you look at the fact that we are now also working hand in glove with them on a variety of issues. I mean, it's beyond the medical sector, it's finance, it's infrastructure, it's technology. When you look at the flow of our technology, not only the ones that they steal, but the ones that we work hand in hand with them, with Google working with China in terms of their military and providing them tools that they aren't even willing to provide DragonEye to the U.S. military, right? And when people actually understand why this is such an exercise in groupthink and in doublethink, right? The ability to hold two contriving ideas in your mind at the same time. They are the most murderous regime in history. That's a fact. That's history. That has been explained a million times, from the Chinese Civil War to the Great Leap Forward, to the 100 Flowers campaign, to the purges, to the Chinese Cultural Revolution, when they declared war on their own history, on their own society, their language, their traditions. When Xi Jinping gets up there and says, this is the culmination of 5,000 years of Chinese history, no. Xi Jinping is the representative, the leader of the party that actually declared war on Chinese history, even the very language itself. And not only did they crack down on dissident groups, but when Raheem said something that was very interesting, talking about philosophy and talking about this idea of whether or not we're going to have a top-down structure versus an individual structure where people are able to seek their own passions and seek their own best interest, their own best use. What he's really talking about is a system of technocracy. And this is something that in China has been refined since the advent of the CCP in terms of, can they control your life? Do they know what you're doing? The CCP, people talk about, oh, they have the facial recognition now. They have surveillance. They're spying on you. They're looking at your text. No. It's way older than that. They have been instituting party commissars at the lowest levels, because they know that if you give someone a title, if you give someone a modicum of power, right? If you scratch, what is it? You scratch a liberal, you can always find a petty dictator underneath, a petty tyrant. This is what they turn people into, and you could be the petty tyrant for your work unit, for your classroom, for your schoolhouse, for the block where you live, for the neighborhood where you're at. Who's getting married?
For your Chaz.
For your Chaz, right. Who's getting married? Who's having kids? Who is doing anything? Who's getting a new job? Who's going to what school? The party keeps track of all of this. And I have a new op-ed that I just finished yesterday. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, is it going to go up in Human Events? Tell us about it.
It's going up later this weekend, but what it is, it explains that, you know, we look at the CCP in terms of their regime, but we have a word for that at home as well that is very similar. And what I do is I break down the numbers. So there's about 92 million party members of the CCP for 1.4 billion Chinese, right? That's about 1%. It's actually less than 1%. But it's very similar to how we talk about the 1% here in the United States. And we look at the ways, the very eerily similar ways that our 1% in the United States and in the greater West has actually been mirroring, right, and finding symmetry with the CCP, operating behind closed doors, shadowy conferences, making decisions. So
un ami français a exprimé ses félicitations pour le nouvel État fédéral de Chine et a remercié Mars Guo pour tout ce qu'il a fait.
Sincères félicitations à l'occasion de ce premier anniversaire de la nouvelle fédération de la Chine. Bravo à M. Ko et merci pour tout ce que vous faites. Et tous ensemble, disons Tech Don CCP.
Prosobiec. Xi Jinping est en train de créer un culte de la personnalité autour duquel il doit se déchaîner.
Central locus in terms of not only Chinese modern politics, but Chinese dynastic politics. This was the site of the Qing Empire, right? This was the site where Mao in 1949, at that very spot where Xi Jinping is standing, declared the People's Republic, so declared the takeover of China by the CCP. And for those who are watching a little bit more closely, look to the person who's standing immediately to his left on that stage. Who is that, right? With the whitish gray white hair, that is Hu Jintao. That is the previous chairman of the party prior to Xi. And so they had been widely seen as rivals. They had been seen as representing different factions within the CCP. For him to be up there, and Wen Jiabang, who was a former premier, standing up there with Li Keqiang, the current premier of China. So this was a huge show of force, and a show of force not only for the party, but for Xi Jinping to say, look, even my rivals are here to support me. I am in control. I am the party. And you actually, if you listen to the words he's using, he's not saying I am the party. He's saying I am the Chinese people. So he's really bestowing all of this power onto himself. He is creating a cult of personality around which he needs to lash out, because he knows, believe it or not, that he's starting to be on the ropes, because we are turning the tide on him in terms of this narrative with COVID-19, with Wuhan, and the fact that Trump is now coming back. Look.
Alice explique dans le War Room de Steve Bannon. Comment le Parti communiste chinois contrôle-t-il la vie des Chinois? Voici l'enregistrement.
Alice, you saw the celebration yesterday, and Xi acting like Mao and acting like an emperor. From the perspective of Lao Beijing, from the perspective of the little guy of old 100 names, what has it been like for the Chinese people to live under the boot of the Chinese Communist Party?
Hi, Mr. Bannon. Thanks for having me on the show. I really want to say the socialism, the CCP is controlling Chinese people's life from every angle. economically, socially, and culturally. And even now, they're trying to control your live organs through this unrestricted bioweapon. So economically, right? Socialism took our land. So if you buy an apartment, you don't own it. You're only allowed to use it for 70 years. Even for that, it usually takes 4 family members' lifetime savings. So to afford that and to survive, every person have to work so hard, like at 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week, to afford that apartment. To raise a kid, it's so expensive. And the CCP make kids compete so hard. So to survive, to go to a good school, all parents have to work so hard together with the kids. What's the real population of China now? Is it 1.4 billion? Miles told us the real number actually is only 1.1 billion. People's willingness to have a kid is really low because it's so expensive. People are working so hard, and they are left with little energy to think about anything else, just to survive. They don't have energy to think about if this social system is right. And even if you're rich, you don't feel safe. Even Jack Ma, he can be in jail the next day. Nobody feels secure. Socially, as Jack Posobiec mentioned, all your connections are tracked. Whatever you say on the website is tracked. If you say anything you're not satisfied with this system, the police will knock at your door next day. Everyone is endangered. People dare not talk about anything. And culturally, we have 5,000 years history. Our tradition were taken away. All our religions were cracked down. People, they want to control your thoughts. They want to brainwash you with their propaganda from school, from kindergarten. And all the kids are listening to this and think, oh, CCP is our Lord, is our Savior. So people have no chance to know what's really going on. And even I hear about the live organ harvesting. So many people are in the concentration camps. If a top CCP leader needs some organ, and you can be targeted. And the genocide in Xinjiang and in Tibet. So many things at so many levels. 100 years is the darkest disaster for Chinese people. And this is a socialism. It's a hell.
Alice, you saw the celebration.
Donald Trump poursuit les grandes entreprises technologiques pour défendre les droits constitutionnels et les libertés sacrées du peuple américain.
So we're in a fight. We're in a fight that we're going to win. We're in a fight that people want us to take on. So many people have said to me, please, sir, do something about big tech. Sue them, sir, sue them. And they've been saying it to me for a long time, but there has never been a better time to do it. Polling released by Scott Rasmussen, highly respected, shows that nearly 2/3 of Americans believe big tech companies should be required to abide by the First Amendment guarantee of free speech. And I think those numbers are low, very low. 68% of Americans believe social media companies should prioritize their fair treatment of every citizen over protecting themselves. They want people protected. They want people to have their voice. And an overwhelming majority believe that tech giants have become too powerful. They've crossed the line many, many times, and by far too much. The American people's birthright of freedom must prevail against big tech and other forces that seek to destroy it. Through this lawsuit, we are standing up for American democracy by standing up for free speech rights of every American, Democrat, Republican, independent, whoever it may be. This lawsuit is just the beginning. It's a very big suit with great lawyers. I'll let you know about that in about a year from now. Maybe I'll change my mind, but I don't think so. They've had a tremendous track record in doing good. We'll also take this battle to the state legislatures, to Congress, and ultimately to the ballot box. And it will be a very popular one at the ballot box. I will never stop fighting to defend constitutional rights and sacred liberties of the American people. I will never stop. So we're in a fight.
Donald Trump pourrait ne pas revenir sur les plateformes de réseaux sociaux qui privent la majorité de ses droits.
If you're successful in this, and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all the social media platforms let you back on and let everyone else back on uninhibited the way that everyone's supposed to have access, would you use their platforms again?
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. I might not. You know, I'm in a different position because if I put out a press release, you know, I'm getting extremely good pickup. But that's me. The world, everybody that's getting banned they can't put out a press release. People would say, who the hell is that? Nobody's going to pick it up. And even myself, I could instantaneously get the word out. If somebody says a lie, like the fake media, I can at least give the opposing side, which I've been doing for 6 years. I used to get great publicity before I ran for office, okay? I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years where I can get a word out, an opposing word. Today, you can't do that. They took away the rights of, in my opinion, the majority.
If you're successful in this, and Twitter...
Voilà, c'est la fin de ce journal sur les actualités de cette semaine dans un instant. Quant à moi, j'aurai un grand plaisir à vous retrouver la semaine prochaine à la même heure. Je vous souhaite à tous un très bon week-end. À bientôt.